Italian journalist and transfer expert Fabrizio Romano has just stated that sporting director Fabio Paratici is to leave Spurs days before the January transfer window opens. He has also stated that Spurs have been scouting RB Leipzig winger Yan Diomande, and the player is valued at around £87 million. David Ornstein from The Athletic has stated that targets Marmoush and Savinho will not be leaving Manchester City in this winter window. Bissouma is back playing again. He captained his side Mali at the AFCON. Two Italian clubs are interested in Spurs centre-back Radu Drăgușin, and Thomas Frank has come out and said, we are a Champions League club, but are we a Champions League club? We finished 17th last season. Hi everyone, hope you're well. Chris Cowlin here. This is another edition of Tottenham News, where I'll be going through all of the latest Spurs news, rumours and reports. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like, share and comment below. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit the follow button and leave a review if you can. Now let's start by talking about the weekend's results so far. On Friday evening, Manchester United beat Newcastle 1-0 at Old Trafford. And then Saturday's results, Nottingham Forest 1, Manchester City 2. Arsenal beat Brighton 2-1 at the Emirates. Brentford beat Bournemouth 4-1 at home. Burnley drew 0-0 against Everton at Turf Moor. At Anfield, Liverpool beat Wolves 2-1. West Ham 0, Fulham 1. And in the late kickoff on Saturday, Chelsea 1, Aston Villa 2. That is 11 consecutive victories in all competitions for Aston Villa. Now, two games will take place on Sunday afternoon. Sunderland will host Leeds. And then, of course, Tottenham Hotspur will travel to Selhurst Park, 4:30pm kickoff. Now, after the results from Friday and Saturday, Spurs remain 14th in the Premier League table. We have played 17, we have won 6, drawn 4, lost 7. We have 22 points. We are now 10 points away from the top 4 and 4 points above 17th, where we finished last season under Ange Postecoglou. A win at Selhurst Park, though, against Crystal Palace will take Spurs up to 11th on goal difference. Now for a couple of updates from Italian journalist and transfer expert Fabrizio Romano. He has just stated that Fiorentina are now waiting for final and formal steps between Fabio Paratici and Tottenham to agree on Italian director's exit. He is expected to become new Fiorentina head of football starting from 2026. Fabrizio Romano has also provided an update on Tottenham's interest in winger Yan Diomande. He has stated, "I'm told there are several Premier League clubs following this player. He is currently playing at RB Leipzig and is doing very well also for Ivory Coast at the AFCON. He's a very talented winger, dribbling with pace. He is a very good player, very good talent, very interesting, and he has big potential." Among many clubs, recently Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur were on a mission to scout this player. He is considered a talent to watch for the future. Now, other reports are stating that the player is currently valued at around £87 million. Now, another update from Italian journalist and transfer expert Fabrizio Romano. This time he has stated a name to keep an eye on, certainly during the winter market, is that of Radu Drăgușin, central defender at Tottenham, who is returning from an injury and could return to Italy. In this case, we must be patient with Tottenham because as of today, Tottenham have not given him the okay to leave, but it is expected that this matter could be unlocked in the coming weeks. Two clubs that have started and have shown an interest, as far as I understand, are Roma and Fiorentina. Now, David Ornstein, transfer expert and journalist with The Athletic, on Tottenham's links to Manchester City duo Omar, Marmoush and Savinho. He has stated, "I'm assured the likes of Marmoush and Savinho are staying at the Etihad as Manchester City have no desire in seeing them leave. They want to use all of their available resources to challenge to win more trophies." Now let's talk about Tottenham Hotspur midfielder Yves Bissouma. Now Bissouma made his first start since our Europa League final victory over Manchester United on Friday evening to captain his country to a 1-1 draw with host Morocco at the Africa Cup of Nations, ending their World Cup run of wins. Bissouma sidelined with injury since the summer before suffering a further setback in October 2025. Yves Bissouma is now back to fitness and was called upon by his national side to lead his nation against the challenge of Morocco, who had won each of their last 19 games, a world record run of consecutive wins in their second group game at the Continental Championship in North Africa. Now, Spurs boss Thomas Frank, in an exclusive interview with Sky Sports, do check it out on their YouTube channel. He was asked about this season and the future of Spurs. He said, I think we are in a transition phase because, yes, we are in the Champions League. We're a Champions League club. But are we a Champions League club? We only qualified because we won the Europa League. We didn't qualify because we were one of the 4 or 5 best clubs in the Premier League last season. We finished 17th in the table. He then went on to talk about this season's Premier League performances and results and said, we've lost twice in a row, but we haven't had 2 bad performances in a row this season. There is a big difference. So my thoughts on everything in this episode, and let me just say a huge thank you to every single one of you, and I will do a separate video on this. We have literally, as I've pressed record on this video, we've literally just reached 200,000 subscribers, so it's simply incredible. Thank you so much for all of your incredible support. Now, Fabio Paratici leaving Tottenham Hotspur days before the transfer window opens. I tell you what, this is an absolute disaster, in all honesty, and what are the plans? What are the plans? You know, who are Spurs going to be bringing in? What are the plans? Are we going to get another sporting director in? Because we were only told a couple of months ago by both sporting directors, Johan Langer, Fabio Paratici, that this was such a great idea. Vinay Venkatesham said it was a great idea to have 2 sporting directors. And then a couple of months later, now one is going to be heading out the door, and the one that has the famous contact book, the one that is in charge mainly of the transfers. And this is a disaster for Spurs. To hear this as a Spurs fan a couple of days before the transfer window opens, and you could tell that Thomas Frank completely avoided that question in the embargoed press conference. Do check that out. It's available now out on the channel. It came out Saturday night at 10:30 UK time. He was asked about, what if Fabio leaves? And he said, well, him and Johan are here at the moment. So honestly, it's so frustrating. We need to bring in real reinforcements. We need to bring in top quality players, not players for the future. We need to bring in players now that are going to make a real impact. And I feel like Fabio Paratici leaving the football club just so early on, after his return to the club, after Spurs stuck by him, having been banned, something has clearly gone on behind the scenes. Let's wait to see what the story is. I'm not going to comment anymore, and I'm not going to speculate, but, something has clearly gone wrong here for him to go in at the football club and then only a couple of months later for him to then be leaving, and the timing is just absolutely dreadful, in my opinion. Fabrizio Romano has stated that RB Leipzig winger Yan Diomande is, being scouted by Tottenham. Do you know what? We scout a lot of players. Every single club scout a lot of players. The realistic thing is, are we going to be paying £87 million for a player in this transfer window? I want to see a huge difference, from this board. Of course, it is a restructure of the board. It is a restructure of the ownership. And I want to see big differences to what we've ever done before. Show ambition and, show the world that we mean business, and we want to be a highly successful club, winning trophies and competing for top honours year in, year out. That's exactly what I want. I don't want any excuses. We certainly don't want any players for the future coming in. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for players for the future, but we have a lot of them. And, at some point you actually need to bring in, real quality who can do it now. Not in 3, 4, 5 years' time. And I've no doubt that we're going to have a fantastic team in 3, 4, 5 years' time if we develop these young players and these young stars that we currently have, and some of those players out on loan. But we need real stars now, and it is becoming a little bit frustrating. The amount of transfer windows where we simply haven't done enough to compete on all fronts, and that is a phrase that Daniel Levy used at the start of this season. Marmoush and Savinho, in my opinion, they would have been great players to come in through the door. We were linked with Marmoush before he actually went to Manchester City. Of course, we didn't get that deal done. But David Ornstein is very adamant that these players will not be leaving anywhere. And best of luck to them, to take Arsenal all the way, and Aston Villa, perhaps, all the way to the end of the season and win the Premier League. I'd much rather Manchester City win it than them not down the road, certainly. Bissouma is back playing. He captained his side, Mali, the AFCON. Great to see him back playing. And I tell you what, when he comes back to Tottenham, not only has he been training, not only has he got match fitness back, I'm sure there's a long way to go for him, but, playing matches is a great sign. And, he can come back, and Spurs can hopefully get him off the books and give him the departure that he needs for so many reasons. Thomas Frank, I've no doubt, will want to offload him and bring in somebody else. And I've no doubt that Bissouma needs a new challenge as well, particularly after, all the troubles that he has had, both, I say both on and off the pitch. It's more off the pitch, with his lateness and, whatever is been going on in his personal life. So, every time a player leaves Tottenham or is just about to leave, I always say I wish them all of the very best. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. I always wanted to see the Bissouma that played for Brighton. I think we saw him play like that a couple of games, but simply not enough. And he's had a lot of off-field struggles. So, wishing him all the best, and, hopefully he can come back and we get, a decent amount of money for him, because he's out of contract at the end of the season. So I've no doubt the Spurs will want to offload him. We have also seen reports as well that they could trigger something in his contract where they could actually keep him on for another year, but it wouldn't mean that they would want to keep him for another year. It's just because they would want a fee for him in the summer. So let's see what happens there. 2 Italian clubs, Fiorentina and Roma, are apparently interested in Spurs centre-back Radu Drăgușin. This is a player as well. His agent keeps coming out and saying, X, Y and Z. He loves the sound of his own voice. We hear from him a lot, but this is a player I wouldn't be at all surprised to see leave somewhere down the line, whether it's in January or whether it's at the end of the season. This is a player that just wants to play regular first-team football. Of course, he's been out of action for the last 11 months with this injury, and but he's come back and he wants to play. The attitude from both the agent and the player, he wants to be starting games, and I can't see how he's going to start many games when you've got the likes of Van de Ven and Romero in this team. Thomas Frank on stating, and I've seen a mixture of replies to this. Some people have said, Thomas Frank basically said, are we a Champions League club? We might be in the Champions League, but are we a Champions League club because we finished 17th last season? He keeps saying about, it's going to take a long time to fix, the problems that we have, etc. To be honest with you, every single stat that I have at this stage of the season, last year under Ange Postecoglou, we were in a better stage under Ange. And I tell you what, how much criticism did Ange Postecoglou get for his football from the fans, from the media, everybody in the football world? Everybody, gave Ange Postecoglou a lot of criticism, and all of our stats at this stage of the season last year were better than Thomas Frank. Thomas Frank was brought in to improve this team, to improve players, and get us up that league table. At the moment, we are 14th. We are only 4 points above 17th, where we finished last season. Have I seen progression? Have I seen enough signs to give me confidence in Thomas Frank going forward? Not at the moment. Not at the moment. I know there's a lot of people that have had enough of his comments, and I just believe that the mentality needs to be a lot better from Thomas Frank as well. And every single time I hear or see that he's done an interview, I'm cringing at some of the comments. And I know that some of the fan base, I know people can overreact sometimes online, but some of the comments that I've seen, wow. I suppose I'm one of the calmer ones, but I am frustrated with the comments that he keeps coming out with. But the board, whoever the manager is, and I feel like I could talk about this all day, whoever the manager is, the board need to do things differently, because we have seen a number of mistakes. Ever since Pochettino left, I feel like we've gone round in circles. We've gone through 6 different managers, 3 interim managers, Ryan Mason twice and Stellini. And we've had a lot of change, and we're about to have a lot of change again. I spoke the other day about the amount of change that we've had at the football club in the last 12 months, and now Fabio Paratici is walking out the door. When we're preparing for a January transfer window where we want to bring in impact players to make a real difference in this squad. So Thomas Frank can't be happy with that either. And Thomas Frank, I tell you what, in every press conference that I see him now, he's looking more and more drained. And he said in the embargoed press conference that he's lucky that he is a person that can get good sleep. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure how in the situation we are in right now. But, huge games coming up for him, I think. The Crystal Palace away game on Sunday, and then the Brentford game on New Year's Day. A huge week for Thomas Frank, a huge week for Spurs, and a huge week for us fans, because, at the start of this episode, I said if Spurs win against Crystal Palace, we go up to 11th. That is quite an embarrassing statement, really, to say. That is the best that we can go for, the near halfway stage of the season. But if we lose these games, and the likes of Nottingham Forest, who played pretty well, actually, against Manchester City. I watched that game on Saturday, and they were unlucky not to get something out of that game. A big week for Frank. Frustrating comments from him, and I just hope that he learns to try and get these fans back on side, because I think it's a fair statement to say that Thomas Frank at the moment is losing fans week by week. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like, share and comment below. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit that follow button and leave a review if you can. Have a great weekend, keep smiling, and come on you Spurs.